Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Kippax, Councillor Haynes, Councillor Atwell, Councillor Coombs, Councillor Flower, Councillor Parker, Councillor Clifford and Councillor Hobbs-Chell. And also we have apologies from members Councillor Somper, Brian, Councillor Parks and Councillor Gorringe, who are hopefully going to join us online.
Thank you. Item 2, are you happy that I signed the minutes of the meeting on the 15th of May as a correct record? Thank you.
Chairman, I'd like it recorded in reference to a question later on. At a certain point in the meeting, just before the deputation on Gaza, I left the room to use the lavatory and to answer a telephone call and then return back. I'd like that minuted because it seems to be a very important issue to the people of Upwey and Broadway, so thank you very much.
Can that be minuted now, later, or do we just accept it? That would be minuted in the minutes of this meeting. It'll be minuted as having left for reasons not connected to the Palestinian thing. Item 3, any declarations of interest? Item 4, at the last council meeting, I had to announce the death of Councillor Bill Chite. We had a minute's silence in respect for him. Tonight, we're going to have tributes to Bill, and I'm going to begin by asking Gary Suttle to make a tribute.
Well, Bill was a loyal servant to Swanage, and he served as a councillor for 34 years. In that time, he was mayor of Swanage, district council leader, and then district council chairman, and more recently, vice chairman of his council. The oddest thing about Bill is he had hay fever for some unknown reason. I've got it tonight. It's really odd. I don't know if it's because I'm reading this or not. Before moving to Swanage, Bill had also been a councillor in Camden. I first met him in '91 when we were both elected in that May for Swanage Town Council. And we became part of a team that would lead on Swanage Beach Recharge, flood alleviation scheme, a new park for Swanage, saving the recycling centre, bringing a new industrial estate to Swanage, to name but a few. It was an era of huge change that required the skills Bill brought to local government. His love of Swanage Railway was unwavering over the years, and he worked tirelessly until the track was restored to Wareham and steam trains once again arrived at Swanage Station. He made Swanage Railway financially stable. He was a linchpin in that organisation that made it what it is today. He was a gentleman. He was a great scholar, and he had a passion for the English language. If he found a spelling mistake or anything amiss, you soon knew about it. And at Swanage Town Council, he was affectionately known as Mr. Picky. And we had many great times in meetings together over the use of English, particularly of officers speak English. If he found an A board with a misspelling or an apostrophe in the wrong place, he'd just march up and rub it out. So, one never knows what's going to happen. My last words with Bill were a day before I left for holiday. He wanted to know when we were going to do a leaflet in Swanage. And I said, "Look, Bill, nothing will happen while I'm away." And he replied, "Okay, chum, we'll do it when you get back." I can still hear him say that, his last words to me. I'm sure they'll fade over the years, but the legacy that he's left in Swanage, I will still see every day. Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Councillor Gibson, who is speaking on behalf of Spencer Flower.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Simon Gibson reading out a tribute to Bill from Councillor Spencer Flower. As a former leader of both Dorset County Council and the first leader of Dorset Council, I had the privilege of working with and getting to know Bill. It became obvious just how passionate Bill was as an advocate for Swanage. His legacies are well known. His insistence that Swanage should be treated fairly was always part of his desire to be a good locally elected member, demonstrated partly by his commitment to the Swanage Railway and the successful campaign for the free school in the town. During a break over coffee, it was not unusual for Bill and I to talk about football, and in particular the fortunes of his beloved Wolverhampton Wanderers, comparing notes and both of us knowing far more about the game than the manager of the day. Bill had a great, wry sense of humour and would be embarrassed by praise, as he was a modest man by nature. Bill was a loyal, hard-working member of the Conservative group, always willing to get involved in key decision-making and helping his colleagues. He was a great wordsmith and a stickler for correct protocol. Bill will be genuinely missed by all who knew him. He was a true community champion, an example we should all aspire to be like. Thank you, Chairman.
I call on Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Andrew Parry, West Parley Ward and leader of the Conservative group. As others have attributed, Bill, of course, was a town, district, county and Dorset councillor. He served as a mayor for his town, as a district chairman and vice chairman of this council. So he knew a thing or two about procedure. And on one glorious occasion, I did happen to witness a rather novice councillor, or it might have been a council officer, I can't quite recall that detail, challenge Bill about a procedural matter. Now, you know that meme where you see somebody eating settling down a big bowl of popcorn, thinking, this is going to be good to watch? That is what it was like, watching somebody trying to school Bill in procedural matter, because the one thing he knew instinctively, back to front, was the correct process for council business. And as I knew as a cabinet member, and perhaps some of the current cabinet will also testify, if Bill ever sidled up to you with the words, "Can I have a minute to discuss a matter?" or "Have you got time for me to have a word?" something was about to happen, which is one, it wasn't going to be a word, and it was going to take a lot more than a minute. But Bill had always done his homework. He was going to come at you with something that he knew was going to take a lot of your time to sort out, but he was absolutely determined to deliver for his residents. And my word of advice to any of us as councillors is if we're remembered for anything and the legacy we leave behind, we should take our schooling from Bill, because he absolutely believed in his residents of Swanage and the town and all it had to offer. And can I just say, as a parent, I'm eternally grateful to Bill for his tremendous work with the Swanage Railway, because there are days when you need to find ways of occupying your children, and the Swanage Railway is exactly the solution for it. But education mattered to Bill. He put a lot of time into making sure that Swanage got its upper school. And in the scheme of things, he has widely been credited with his work on the Swanage Railway. But perhaps we haven't given him enough credit for the fact that education in Swanage is as good as it is today because of his work. So in paying tribute to Bill, I will miss him terribly for his wisdom and his humour, and I feel that this council chamber will be worse off for not having his presence here.
Now, Councillor O'Leary.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. To me, Bill Trite was a character from another, perhaps, bygone era, perhaps a more simple age of civility, high standards, and dedicated to public service. I don't think he ever saw a mobile phone he liked, or a laptop, or in some cases, a housing application, planning application. He could be cantankerous, he could be many things, but he was always a gentleman. Never without a tie, always a kind word, always helpful, a fanatic for proper grammar and protocol. I remember once I rang him up and called him vice chairman of council, to which he chastised me saying, I called him a chair of council. He said, a chair has 4 legs and you sit on it. You don't sit on me. His passing singles another closing chapter to a different era in our county's history, of old-fashioned summer seasons, of sandy sandwiches on Swanage Beach, and of course old steam trains chugging along the Purbeck Hills. Bill's style of politics is perhaps gone from many and from the mainstream, and perhaps we're still certainly far worse off for it. But may God bless Bill Trite, the people he served, and the town he dedicated his entire life to. Thank you.
Now, Councillor Apothecary.
Thank you, Chair. There's going to be a bit of crossover here. You won't be surprised to hear. I knew Bill for a much shorter time than the previous speakers, but I just wanted to say a few words in tribute. We first met when I was mayor at Gillingham 12 years ago, and I was immediately taken by his warm personality and quiet humour. I was born and grew up in Swanage, so we had quite a lot in common. When I became chairman of North Dorset District Council a couple of years later, Bill was chairman of Purbeck District Council, and I would regularly meet him and Cheryl at civic functions. We formed a very strong friendship. Of course, it wasn't very long before LGR came along and we both found ourselves on the new unitary Dorset Council. The skills, experience and talent that Bill had to offer was really quite amazing. His interest in and understanding of the minutiae of the Constitution was quite something to behold. His support to me and commitment in the role of Vice Chairman of Council was so very much appreciated and valued. In all aspects, he was the perfect gentleman, one of the old school with a strong sense of order, fairness and justice. The legacy Bill leaves in the community is quite remarkable, and we've heard much from Councillor Suttle and others. I would just like to add that had Bill not put in the extensive background research regarding the Swanage hero Trevor Chadwick, the dangerous and selfless act of rescuing 669 Jewish children from the clutches of the Nazis would never have been correctly attributed. And certainly there would not have been a beautiful and poignant statue erected in his memory for all to see. The wonderful Swanage community raised the money for the statue, but the information that inspired them came from Bill. So thank you for your dedicated service, Bill. You were a stunning exemplar to us all.
Now I call on Councillor Brenton.
I thought it was only fair that Bill got a tribute from this side of the House. I first encountered Bill Trite at Purbeck District Council. He was responsible for setting up the Purbeck Volunteer of the Year Awards, which is the first time I tripped over him. He understood that most community activities could only happen if there were willing volunteers in the parishes and towns. This was a ceremony that made people feel appreciated and rewarded. This was one of the links between parish and town councils, which has been he felt had been lost with local government reform. He never liked the idea of the unitary authority. He didn't like the cabinet system. He strongly believed that Purbeck, and especially Swanage, was the best part of Dorset. He believed we must fight against the urbanisation of Dorset and give much more weight to parish and town councils' opinions. But Bill was always unfailingly correct and polite in his language. He was the epitome of good manners, even with people he didn't appreciate. I already miss his quiet mutterings in planning meetings, and I have lost a valuable source of gossip. He was a rounded character with many other interests apart from local politics. Amongst the elders of this place, and some of us aren't young, it is worth considering, could we pack a place with friends and colleagues to pay our respects like he did? Bill's unfailing politeness to those with whom he did not agree should be a lesson to us all. Above all, he was a gentleman.
Cheryl, this evening you will have heard how much everyone on this council thought about Bill. He will certainly be missed on this council. I've known Bill for many, many years, and I know he'll certainly be missed not only in Swanage, but in the whole council area. And thank you very much for coming this evening, and best wishes to you. Tonight, I have also to report the recent deaths of past District Councillor Sally Elliott, formerly of East Dorset Council, Alan Beard, formerly of West Dorset Council, and Ron Nash, who was a Dorset County Councillor. And I invite Councillor Parry to pay tribute.
Thank you, Chair. Alan Beard, Sally Elliott, Ron Nash are all worthy of our remembrance this evening. And perhaps I could just, for those of you who weren't and had the privilege and pleasure of knowing them, perhaps I could just tell you a few brief details. Alan Beard was twice elected to West Dorset District Council and briefly also served on Dorchester Town Council. His most recent time was 2003 to 2007. He lived to the grand age of 95, but he had had quite a varied life in his route to Dorchester. He had, of course, served national service, and after demob, embarked upon a career as in aviation insurance, which was still quite a new field at that time. But he gave it all up to follow a passion, which was to become a publican, and he was quite successful at it. In fact, he was very successful at it. He built up a little chain of pubs and restaurants that he had to his name. But eventually, he settled on just one here in Dorchester, the Antelope Hotel. Local members may recall it as a thriving destination. Very popular was the Thatch Bar, so I'm told. Too young to know myself. Today, of course, it is a thriving shopping centre. Perhaps that's why when he became a district councillor, his great motivation was to serve on the licensing committee. It was an area of great interest to him, and he did so with great distinction. But he also showed great interest in a new project. We now know it as Brewery Square. But he was one of the early supporters and adopters that wanted to see Brewery Square happen, because he didn't like the idea of huge amounts of urban area just lying in fallow. Outside of politics, he had a number of interests: live music, military memorabilia, and photography, of course, was a great interest. He had his own darkroom and developed his own films. But to me, he was my first political opponent. He won a district seat against the novice Andrew Parry back in 2003. But he was a friend above all else. He was a neighbour for a period of time in my life, and a really good host, and somebody whose company I greatly enjoyed. So I'm very glad that he made it to 95. That's an incredible innings, and a tribute to Dorchester. Sally Elliott. Sally Elliott represented the Longham ward on East Dorset District Council up until 2015, when boundary changes saw it moved. And it happened to coincide with a time when her late husband was gravely ill. So really, wasn't in a place to move on politically with us. But she was a vocal campaigner for her residents. And I found this out exceptionally when my first county council seat included her former district seat of Longham. So Andrew was invited round for a cup of coffee or a 2-hour lecture on everything I had to do to represent the people of Longham, as it turned out, because she was passionate in speaking up for them, even outside of the council chamber. She also had a great passion for young people in politics. I was 42 at the time, so deemed to be young by local government standards, and was also a big advocate for seeing more women stand in politics at all levels of local government and beyond. A great supporter of the arts, and despite being having the challenge of living with severe hearing loss, managed to make her points known and certainly heard what she needed to hear. As the years passed, I'm afraid there were some age-related health matters for Sally. And the very last time I visited her, her carer invited me in, and Sally sort of woke from a slump. And for a few precious moments, was the old sparkle in Sally's eyes was there, but it did drift off after a few minutes, and she returned to wherever her world was at that time. But Longham will always have the proud honour of having Sally represent them, and that's important. Finally, I'd like to pay tribute to Ron Nash. Now, many people, I have to take you back in time. The 2005 local elections, and in the West Dorset area, we were looking for various candidates, including yours truly again, the second outing where the electorate decided they wanted somebody else. But we discovered in Chickerell we had a vacancy for a candidate, and we were scratching our heads to find somebody who could fill this role. And along came this chap, Ron Nash. And the thing about Ron is that whilst all politicos are busy worrying about canvas cards and their printed literature and everything, Ron had an air of calmness about him. He really felt quite self-assured, but not in an arrogant way. He served as Dorset's county councillor for Chickerell and Chesilbank from 2005 to 2009. And it's almost as if he kind of wasn't going out to campaign to be elected, but he was elected with a comfortable majority. So I can only guess that his residents knew he was a safe pair of hands. And by all accounts, that is very much how his personality was. So, Chair, thank you for giving me the time to pay tribute to former council colleagues and friends. It is important that we remember their contributions, all of which has led to us being in the chamber today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Tonight, this is the last council meeting for Aidan Dunn, our Director of Corporate Development. Aidan played a pivotal role in establishing this authority and has been looking after our finances ever since. We wish you well, Aidan, as Chief Executive of BCP, and I'm sure our councils will be working well together. But good luck with your new role. I think you'll need it, as we've all read that that BCP are facing an imminent financial threat. But Aidan, I'm sure you'll sort it all out for them. Good luck. And tonight is also the last evening that we'll have Sam sitting by us as Acting Chief Executive. So thank you for everything you've done, Sam, and good luck with the rest of your job. You might notice we haven't got the Youth Council here this evening. They're all very busy doing end-of-term activities, but they will be here in October. Item 5, public participation. Question 1 is by Adrian Gunner. It's going to be read out by Alex Benton if he isn't here. No, he isn't.
Thank you. This is a question submitted by Mr. Adrian Gunner. It is common knowledge that education budgets are significantly stretched, in no small part due to the costs associated with high needs education. I believe it is appropriate for members of Dorset Council to be aware of these costs in an effort to achieve reasonable value of money to the council. When Coombe House was initially purchased, it was made on the justification to be more in control of placement costs. I have been made aware that since then, the placement costs at Coombe House School have increased significantly. To help us understand a little of the pressures on the high needs budget, I would be pleased to hear answers to this question. What will be the annual Element 3 cost per student at Coombe House School for the 25 to 26 academic year? How does that compare to the range of charges made by other independent organisations? What are the student transport costs associated with Coombe House School? And are there other provisions that could be used to reduce both transport and placement costs whilst similar provision and preparation for adulthood outcomes.
Thank you. I'll ask Councillor Sutton to reply.
Yes, thank you to Mr Gunner for the question, very welcome. School placement decisions are based on an assessment of the needs of the child as set out in their education, health and care plan, and a range of provisions are used to meet needs. We strive to meet children's needs as locally to where they live as possible, and this aligns with our strategy of supporting inclusion in mainstream schools and colleges and the ongoing investment in additional specialist resource provisions and special school places. This will improve outcomes for Dorset children and reduce average transport and placement costs. Comparison of fees and transport costs with comparable independent special school placements have been undertaken, and Coombe House represents value for money. Element 3 funding does not apply to independent special schools such as Coombe House. There is a single placement fee. For 25-26, the fee for a place at Coombe House School is £52,000, and the average for a comparable independent special school placement fee is £74,000. In 24-25, the average transport cost for a pupil to Coombe House was £14,600, and the average for a comparable independent special school placement was £16,500. Thanks.
Thank you. Item 6, there are no petitions or deputations this evening. We move on to item 7, the announcements for the Leader of the Council.
Yeah, it's just you're not in view, that's the trouble. That one.
Do you want me to move it there? I'll move it there.
No, it's all right. This one should pick you up, I reckon. Turn it off.
Check. Yeah. It's on. Can't see me though.
Why is that not working now?
Do you want me to move to there?
No.
I'll just go sit over there.
I don't know why it's not working. That is weird. It's not picking you up, is it? Let's try that one.
Sorry, can't hear your mic's not. Sorry, John, my bad.
We did know we got problems with this, but not as bad as we expected. So hopefully by the next meeting, everything will be sorted. We're certainly looking at it, yes.
That work? Yeah. Sort of. Okay, sorry about that. I'll try and be brief. These things tend to grow. So briefly, some of us were at the LJ last week, really useful, networking, some good things on the agenda. We also had the South West Council's AGM, which we are a member of, some of you may know. But more importantly, we also had the AGM for Britain's Leading Edge. Some of you are going to go, what's Britain's Leading Edge? It's a collaboration of rural, upper-tier authorities without major cities, and we are a member of that. It was founded quite a few years ago. Steve Ford, who you'll know, was instrumental when he was at Cornwall. It's been chaired by Cornwall ever since, and with the new leader of Cornwall, they're keen to create a rotating chair. So Dorset is going to have the chair and the secretariat for the Britain's Leading Edge for the next year, and then we'll hand it over to LGA next year. Devolution. So some of you will know the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill was published today, went to Parliament. It's been renamed. Some really interesting stuff in there. Mayoral elections and PCC elections will go back to supplementary vote, a form of PR. There's lots of stuff about enabling communities to save their local pubs, apparently, which is an interesting bit to put in the paper. But the really interesting stuff is our devolution. So we've been working really hard over the last couple of months since the last full council to basically progress the devolution and work together with our partners on the devolution footprint, so that's Somerset, Wiltshire and BCP. A few weeks ago, on the 20th of June, Baroness Taylor accepted an invite from us to visit the Wessex footprint. She ended up in Salisbury on the train, and then in Porton Down, was subjected to two very long but very informative presentations from our officers, from our chief execs and from our leaders. The end result was essentially pretty much still the same. We've got a great deal. We're almost, we're basically oven ready. But the issue is Swindon. Swindon need to be somewhere in the devolution landscape, and currently they're not. However, following discussions at the LGA last week, in particular between the leader of Swindon and the leader of Wiltshire, it became very clear that Swindon will never join Wessex. And on the back of that, the chief execs of our four authorities had a meeting today with the Director General, Will Garton, and the outcome is very positive. I think basically the outcome is that we've got the civil servants on board, and we'll be discussing this at a leader and chief exec meeting tomorrow and writing to MHCLG and the Deputy Prime Minister probably immediately. It also turns out that one of the authorities on the priority programme, which is elections in 26, have essentially dropped out. They won't make the elections next year. So there may be a chance that we could have elections in 26. We'll find out soon, I suspect. And the only other thing that's going on in terms of devolution is that you may have heard that ICBs are merging or clustering. That we managed to get that cluster, so it's essentially Somerset, Dorset, and what is Bath, North East Somerset, and Wiltshire and Swindon. That's going to be our cluster, which is almost our devolution footprint, which is another tick in the box. So that's all we're going to say. Devolution is progressing, and we may hear some more very soon, maybe next week.
Anyone like to ask a question on the leaders' report? Thank you very much. We'll go on to item 8, the review of council wards. So I ask Councillor Ireland to introduce this.
Yeah, thank you. I'll take the paper as read. Some background. For those of us who have been around since the previous authorities for Dorset Council, so the 5 districts and boroughs plus Dorset County Council, we went through a rewarding for the creation of Dorset Council, which took place in around about 2018. I think it's fair to say that some of us were happy with the outcome and some of us weren't, and it was acknowledged at the time that in particular areas of Dorset Council, it probably wasn't the correct result, but we took it as it was. In terms of number of members of wards, there's some dispute in some areas of the council. But we went with what we've got, and then we represent the wards that were created back then. There was an understanding that it would get looked at some point. And from that, and for those of us who are in the Shadow Authority, I think it's fair to say that was the understanding. And I believe Spencer Flower, back in probably 2019, I don't want to misquote him, but he essentially said that in the second term of Dorset Council, we would look at it again. So I remembered that. We've had some meetings of the group leaders, which facilitated by Jackie Andrews, who's at the back and will answer any questions, I'm sure, shortly. We agreed that we should approach the Local Boundary Commission and look at the warding again. Any changes will take place in 2029. All members will be involved, and in the end, it would be a full council decision as well. So whatever recommendations happen, it will come back. Tonight isn't the time to debate what you would want, how many members you want, how many electors you have in your ward. That's for the future process. This is purely to get your agreement to actually approach the Boundary Commission and also set up a task and finish group, which is detailed in the paper, to look into that. But all members will have an input, and there will be consultations, webinars, all that sort of stuff that you did expect. There is the only other thing I'll add is that there is essentially an upper limit on the number of councillors we can have, purely because we're in this chamber. It's essentially 91 if you want to maintain the layout as we're sitting tonight and leave that free for somebody else to sit. So we can only fit 91 councillors, including 10 cabinet here. So that's probably one of the things that is a limit. Everything else is pretty much up for grabs in terms of how many members, what the electorate size is, whether we have multiple wards, multiple member wards, all that sort of stuff. So I'm just asking for your approval, and I think Councillor Biggs is going to second, and Jackie Andrews will answer any questions, I'm sure, if you have any, and there is one.
Councillor Biggs, would you like to say something now?
Mr. Councillor Richard Biggs, Property Assets and Economic Growth. Obviously gives me pleasure to second it. It's perfectly sense, and as has been said, it was talked about being done in the next phase, which we're in now. So I fully support that process being started. Thank you.
Right. Anyone like to speak on this? Councillor Lacey-Clark.
Chairman, thank you so much. Councillor Knox-Shurin, Lacey-Clark, Lamford Forum Ward. Totally in favour of the review going ahead. One thing that caught me off guard there, we're not actually saying that the non-disabled accessible chamber will dictate the maximum number of councillors as opposed to democratic representation and process limiting it, which should obviously, we shouldn't let a building stop us having the correct representation to our residents. And I'd like to try to persuade them to take that straight off as an item, because I think that's an awful way of carrying out governance. We should do it based on what the people need to represent them. It should be very little more than that. Thank you.
Councillor Ireland, would you like to reply?
That is a fair comment. Yeah, we could just rebuild the chamber, I guess. So, fine.
Anyone else like to speak on this? Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with the leader. I broadly welcome a review of the warding of Dorset Council area. He did, of course, mention the upper tier limit of 91 members. We're bound to be asked the question, what's the lower limit? People will, of course, recall the old county council being about 46 members, but then you have to factor in responsibilities of district as well. So perhaps we could just understand that the range we could, not saying we should or we will, but we could look at would be appreciated.
Councillor Ireland.
I can't really answer the question as to a lower limit. I think some councils recently have just reduced. Wiltshire have just come down, I think. Somerset are in the process of doing the same now. I don't know whether they're going up or down. I'm looking to Jackie, but I know the wards have changed. In the end, the Task and Finish group will look at it and will take members' views into consideration. Our population is increasing, so if you think of it that way, either we have to represent more people, which maybe is not a problem, or you have to have more councillors. It's likely to go up probably rather than down, but I don't know, to be honest.
Thank you. Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I have to endorse my fellow councillors to my left. Sorry. My left. My left. I do think that we shouldn't hand-tie ourselves at this point. I feel that the boundary reviews previously were not quite what they should have been, so I'm delighted that we're looking at it again, but we should be prepared to go down in number as well as possibly go up. And absolutely, we shouldn't be strung by what we can do within this chamber.
Thank you. Are there any more comments? Now, we'll have the recommendation. We will go to the vote.
Okay, thank you. The vote is now open. Councillor Sarah Williams, would you mind voting for me again, please? Thank you, everyone. And the results of the vote are 69 in favour of the recommendations, which are carried. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to item 9, the update to the scheme of delegation. Again, Councillor Ireland.
Oh.
Sorry. With your permission, Chair, I'd like to actually postpone this and defer this paper. In light of ordering governance on Monday, it's become clear that we need to change the Constitution again, and rather than do it in a piecemeal basis, I'm proposing we just take this paper away and come back with a better paper, a bigger package. Do I need a seconder for that or not?
Probably need a seconder because it's on the agenda. Who would like to second that? And so we're going to take it away and look at it again. Thank you. Everybody happy with that? Thank you. Item 10, the notice of motion. Councillor Suttle, introduce the notice of motion.
Thank you, Chair. Well, the reason I've brought this motion forward is to support the swell of public opinion in Swanage, Wareham, other areas against the booking system. In Swanage, we have 12 places for cars to use, and under the booking system of 30 minutes per slot, you're going to restrict it to 24 cars an hour. And currently, according to the chaps at the recycling centre, we probably have up to 70 an hour using it. So it seems madness to restrict up to 40 plus residents from using the tip per hour. I don't understand that. By the way, we don't have any queues. The evidence is that if you provide up-to-date facilities in the right location, you don't need a booking system. You only find that out if you gather evidence, consult the public and the operators. In the Cabinet decision paper, it clearly stated that consultation would take place, but it never did. A few days ago, you made a statement this would only be introduced in 4 sites. Then you made another statement that you were going to bring in ANPR cameras. And for me, that's the system by the back door. You can't gather much information from number plates in Swanage, because half the place is holiday homes. Most of the people you'll find will come from London. I can assure you they haven't driven there from London. And someone said, oh, they should pay. Well, they're already paying double, so I don't think they'll be very happy with paying more. Anyway, if you want to know how many cars use the tip, put in a cable across the road. You'll soon find out. Anyway, we are where we are. So I propose the motion. We call on this council to scrap its proposed blanket tip appointment system and instead look at the situation centre by centre in consultation with ward members and the general public. Thank you.
Thank you. This will be seconded by Councillor Leary.
Chairman, may I request to speak at the end of the debate to surmise, please?
Yes, that's fine. Anyone would like to speak in this debate? Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. What we should probably do is look at Dorset Council's finances, because this is actually what this motion is actually about, to be honest. This year, 69% of our £417 million budget, nearly £292 million, goes to adults, children's services and school transport. We spend £38 million just on school transport. That's more than enough to build 3 new HRCs in 1 year. Yet we transport some children for over 2 hours a day because there aren't suitable schools closer to home. That's bad for taxpayers, the environment and the children. But we have no choice. Despite making savings over 10 million alone last year, these are demand-led statutory services. Dorset Council is essentially a care organisation. For every pound of your council tax, 57p goes on these services. So where does that leave the services that people shout loudest about? The bins, the potholes, the grass cutting, the recycling, and everything else. These are the first to be cut, when big budgets overspend. We all know that. Waste and recycling is just 8% of our total budget and always under pressure. That's why we need to run HRCs more efficiently, to reduce waste, recycle better, and generate income. You guys were in charge for the last 5 years of Dorset Council, and yet you continue to let our own residents pay for other people's waste. What were you thinking of? That's over £1 million. The proposed efficiencies to support the residents were discussed at the all-member budget cafe, which you could have attended, and some of you did, and was also contained in the February budget. Many here were part of a cross-party working group on waste. You know the options, but not a peep out of you until some residents started complaining. No consultation was required because the changes, critically, don't reduce service levels. But if this motion passes and we do go out to consult, the public will basically be asked how to cut costs. So what may they be? A booking system that lets us charge our non-Dorset residents and stop trades waste abuse, keeping all 10 HRCs open 7 days a week, or closed HRCs 2 days a week. That was an option many of you heard of the waste working group, or close 1 or 2 sites permanently. Only one of these options protects Dorset taxpayers and the environment. In 2 years' time, will people see me in Swanage walking to my favourite chocolate shop and say, that's the councillor who kept all the tips open every day of the week? Well, probably not. Will they observe Councillor O'Leary in Weymouth and say, that's the councillor who forced a consultation which forced tips to close for 2 days a week? Possibly. Or Councillor Suttle in Swanage. That's the councillor who forced a consultation that closed our tip. Very likely. So when considering how to vote on this motion, be very careful what you wish for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Monks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Craig Monks, Bedminster Ward. Many will speak this evening on the pros and cons of the booking system. Indeed, the leader just did a very good job at doing that just now. But we missed the point in this debate. The core point this motion addresses is the public feeling against it. 96% polled by Dorset Echo, thousands of signatures, hundreds of Facebook posts, all our MPs, one police and crime commissioner, and the majority of this chamber, if they're honest this evening, are all against this proposal and resent the lack of consultation. The worst of all worlds was the U-turn that we saw, where only 4 sites will have the booking system. This leaves areas like Sherborne and Shaftesbury wondering, why us? And places like Bedminster and Bridport thinking, we're next. Public feeling is unified, and I will not go away this evening without supporting this motion. This motion gives us all a simple choice. Vote for this motion and allow your residents to hear the issues, see the facts, the alternatives, and have their say democratically. Or you can vote no or abstain from the vote, and you will hear your residents' anger on every doorstep, every day for the next 4 years. Because this won't blow over, this will go on until the next election. I urge all of you to vote for this motion this evening and allow them the opportunity, your residents, the opportunity to share their views with us so we can assess the sites on a case-by-case basis and hopefully try and take our residents with us, because at the moment we're trying to impose a solution to a problem they do not understand and they resent not having that opportunity. It's a simple vote, doesn't kill anything, this can come back, but hopefully we'll take more people with us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Paul Kimber, Portland. Our HRCs, if there's one service we do really, really well, and the people of Portland, and I'm speaking as the Councillor for Portland, do well, is provide this service. The staff are polite, helpful, and on this, we never took the people with us or understood what we were up to. I can understand in bigger populations that you will have to have a different system. But for Portland, the people, and I've never had so many emails and people phone me up to say, do something about this. It's been quite an issue on the island. I, for one, are pleased that you've started to change your mind and start to rethink it. I don't see any problem in anybody ever changing their mind. I know all governments, all councils do it at the end. I know my government seems to do it quite a lot, but the serious stuff is that this was one service that people really, really appreciate on the island, and the many people I've also met from Weymouth. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak before the seconder comes back? Councillor Knock-Lacey.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to touch on something. So I was following the comms that were coming out of it, because obviously nowadays we get all our information from the central comms rather than getting any involvement in the decision-making, so to speak. And the comms was very clear that it wasn't a cost-saving notion. They were quite clear on that when responding to comments. And it was about making them efficient and improving the service there. But we've just heard directly from the leader that it's just a cost-saving motion. And if it is just a cost-saving motion, that leads me to worry slightly, because obviously we had some good news earlier on today that the budget deficit was going down. And I assume our future council's on plan, and that's going to cover the entire hole in the budget. So I'm a bit concerned that we're having to make a very difficult decision that the residents aren't supporting without consulting them, even though we did say we would, for a financial reason. Is there an underlying worry and a problem within the council that we haven't been made aware of to do finances, that the small amount of saving this will make is going to save us from? And also, could we please have a recorded vote for this?
All votes are recorded. Yeah. Okay. If we want to put a properly recorded vote as we are doing it, we'll have to have a motion in a second and everybody in favour. Otherwise, does anyone want to second that? All those in favour of having a properly recorded vote? All those against? Right, we'll have a recorded vote then. But in the meantime, I've got Councillor Parry would like to speak. Yeah. We only need 10 members to ask for a recorded vote, and we had a lot more than that. So, Councillor Parry.
Thank you, Chair. When the leader looked in our direction and started talking about you guys, I thought Tony Blair had made a political comeback. But the Conservative group actually ran the HRCs very efficiently. And my colleague, Councillor Laura Beddow, I'm sure could speak at great length about what a good service was provided. So why all the U-turns? What's that been all about? Why has the comms around this whole introduction that they are ram-railed through, why have there been little changes along the way? Is it to save political blushes? Is the cabinet member unsure of the ground that they're on? Has the financial argument just not been proven, as many suspect? And what's the fear about consultation? This is a council with a very proud track record of consultation. We have quite literally consulted on everything from library times to walking your dog on the beach and all sorts of things in between. But for some reason, the Cabinet are absolutely wedded to the idea that the people of Dorset may not have a say through public consultation on fundamental changes to how they access household recycling centres. And that is what is at the heart of this motion. It is giving the voice back to the people of Dorset, and I do implore you all to support it on that basis.
Thank you. We now have Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, this situation occurred because we had to make savings. We were all tasked, every cabinet member, to make savings. between 5, 10, or even 20%, because we needed to make savings, because we have a financial issue. Mr. Clifford isn't here this evening, unfortunately, or he might dwell on that a bit more. The savings identified through a booking system in the HRCs were, in the first instance, £120,000 from the first year. Now, that £120,000, and is one of the reasons why we've taken up the 4 sites rather than the 10 sites, is 22% of the waste that goes into Sherborne HRC comes from Somerset. In tonnage-wise, that's £62,000 worth. That's just tonnage. That's not what it costs to do to maintain the HRCs. In Shaftesbury, it's 18.7% that comes from Wiltshire and 1.1% from Somerset. And this was all done on surveys of last year. So there was the savings. Not only are the savings that you introduce a booking system, you save on trade abuse and you save on commercial abuse, because we know it's happening. If you're booking it, it doesn't happen. So that's why we wanted this. That's what we were tasked with, saving money. The options given for saving money around the HRCs were, as the leader has consequently said, closing HRCs. It would be either that or reducing hours in HRCs or reducing days in HRCs. We wanted to keep the service exactly the same as what it was, which it is, or which it will be, accessible. It's no different to book a slot in an HRC than it is, well, actually, it's quite easy. It's easier than booking a slot with a doctor. At least you know you're going to get one in 2 weeks. The 30-minute slot is portioned in the, and naturally, it gives people a time frame to go to the HRC. All right, I can book my doctor online. So, 30-minute slots divided into the amount of capacity within the HRC. I go to my HRC and there are cars all over the place. There's queues. So for me, it smooths out the load throughout the day. So, and I know there are people within this chamber who currently use the booking systems in Hampshire, who supported the idea of us going for a booking system in Dorset. Wiltshire need to pay us if they want to come into our county and dump their rubbish, or not their rubbish, their recycling. And the people from Somerset need to do the same. I'm sorry, but it has to be done. We are paying, our taxpayers are paying to get rid of other counties' waste, and that's just not fair. We currently pay Hampshire and BCP councils a lot of money. This year budgeted around £800,000 for our residents to go in there and to dispose their free waste. All right, so if it's not going to play ball the other way, and I know discussions have taken place with other councils, I beg you to turn down this motion.
A bit low. Councillor, yes.
Thank you. My name is Laura Beddoe. I'm councillor for West Purbeck. I used to have this portfolio. It is true that Dorset Council pays neighbouring authorities so that our residents who are on those border areas, it's actually more efficient than overloading the tips that they'd have to drive a long way to use that are in the Dorset Council area. It's worked well. I wonder where this will end, though, because if we say that the residents from other counties will be paying £5 or £10, whatever it turns out to be, to use our tips, then essentially the residents are paying twice because they're paying their council to have a waste disposal system, and then they're paying us £5 per visit. Does that then translate to our residents paying BCP and Hampshire councils per visit as well? Could that come down the line? The main point, though, of this evening, I think that's a debate for another day. The main point of this motion is to say that we should have asked the residents, but I don't think it's just the residents. When we did the library consultation, that wasn't about cutting services either. And I remember consulting, I went to every single library. I remember quite a few members of the Liberal Democrat group made strong representations because there were hourly changes, opening time changes, and we tweaked those. We listened, as you guys have done, Tony Blair moment. And we said, okay, you know your towns, so yeah, okay, if you think that these opening hours aren't going to work, then we'll listen. We also spoke at length to our employees, our colleagues who work in libraries. I go to the tip quite a lot, and they haven't been spoken to. They don't think it's a great idea. The people that work there can foresee huge problems. So I just think that in the interests of fairness, we should be asking our residents. As Councillor Parry said, we always have done. And they have maybe taken umbrage at this because they weren't asked.
Councillor Azad.
Thank you, Chair. Beryl Azad from Wareham Ward. I'm against this motion. I know that the residents haven't been consulted, but it's not one of the main things in this council that we need to consider. It's actually one of the lesser things. And not only that, in Purbeck, we are very lucky in Purbeck to have 2 HRCs. And as I was on the review panel, it actually, both those in Purbeck have got the less footfall, and we could have taken up the option of closing one of them. And possibly it would have been Wareham, mine, that's 2 actually streets away from my house. Well, actually, I would have accepted that because Swanage is state of the art. Swanage people are very passionate about their HRC because they fought for it when Panorama Road tip was actually closed about 10 years ago. And I can see why Gary, Councillor Suttle, would want to keep them. And actually the residents would be up in arms because they were up in arms when there was going to be nothing in Swanage. And they would have had to come 10 miles to come to Wareham. But anyway, we've been lucky in those 10 years to have 2 in Purbeck, whereas other people in more, towns and conurbations have had to queue. And also the money that's spent in actually paying BCP and other councils and counties is way beyond what we should be getting reciprocally back, which we're not. And if we don't do a booking system, that can't be accounted for. So I'm afraid we need to do the booking system. Yes, we've taken a bit of a back seat about saying, okay, we'll only do a pilot scheme on the 4 that are used the most, but take it as a pilot scheme. I can assure you it will come. Thank you.
Councillor Gibson.
Thank you very much. Councillor Simon Gibson, representing Verwood, one of those wards where a booking system via the Somerley tip in Hampshire has been operating for quite some time. I've been really clear. For my residents in Verwood, I believe that the booking system works fairly well. I must say, despite that, my residents have very mixed views on that. Some like it, some don't. But what I'm also clear in is that that works for me in my ward because of an issue that existed around queuing, perhaps similar to what John experiences in Sherborne. But one of my big concerns when we headed in towards a unitary authority was that all issues would be treated with a one-size-fits-all approach. And I don't believe that that's the best way to run a county as wide and as diverse as Dorset is. So ultimately, I believe it's right to have some nuance, and I believe it's right to teach or to treat each area as they would hope to be treated. And it's very hard to do that if you don't ask. So for me, this issue isn't at all about, or the motion tonight isn't at all about whether you think a booking system is a good idea. It's about whether you think asking people is the right thing to do or not. And whilst I have a lot of sympathy for a lot of the arguments that the leader made, there's some quite compelling arguments in that. Ultimately, how we go forward here matters. Because for me, I know that there's difficult choices coming down the lines. I've been around long enough to know what the state of local government finances across the country are like. However, it fills me with no confidence at all that we're not going to ask the public around the things that we consider to be difficult. If the argument that the leader makes is as strong as he believes it is, it might be, it might not. Ask the public. I think we do ourselves no favour as an authority if we think that we know best and that asking the public about the difficult decisions is going to create an outcome that we find politically impossible. I think we have to trust the public on this. And I believe that actually, ultimately, you know that to be true. If the argument was so compelling that there's no alternate to this, we must do this and we must do it now, why the first U-turn? Why the second U-turn? So all I would say is let's just take a step back and ask the public if this is truly what they want. If they tell us it is, then great. If they tell us not, I think we ought to listen to that. But I think this is a precedent that doesn't bode well for the difficult challenges that we've got ahead.
Councillor Weller.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Kate Weller of Rodwell and Wyke. I forgot to say that last time. This debate hasn't cleared the air, I don't think. It's really rather confused it, because we started off being told that these were efficiencies. And then Councillor Andrews made it very clear that they were savings. So are they efficiencies? Are they savings? They're both. Now, we in this chamber now know that. But the members of the public don't know that. And despite the opinion of Councillor Ezard, it is important that we ask our residents what they think. They want to give us their opinions. I have firmly believed all the time that I've been a councillor that we get a much better result when we take our residents with us and we do things with them, not to them. If it is so right for efficiency that we run this system, our residents will see that, because they're not stupid, despite what some people may think. And if it is right that we need to make those savings, and we all know that that is the case, our residents will see that and they will agree with us. So let's consult with them and take them with us to get an efficient waste recycling system. And we can do that by a good consultation, and that's what this notice of motion will allow us to do. Thank you.
Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ryan Hope, Cabinet Member for Customer, Culture, Community Engagement and Ward Member for Westham and Weymouth. I'm following where we are with this motion, and I think there's two tongues to this motion. There is the current situation with HRC or TIP bookings, followed by a second prong with consultation. Now, I'm not going to touch on consultation too much because I've got a question on that later on, and I could read that script now, we could skip that, but we'll stick to the TIP booking. We all had an all-member briefing before this went out. I didn't hear that dissent then. We discussed this in the budget. It wasn't part of the budget amendments that came forward by opposition. We discussed it in the budget cafes. We have all had in this chamber sight of this proposal. We can communicate with our residents. We could put the messaging out. In fact, some of our colleagues across the chamber did put the messaging out following the HRC booking. They said, HRC booking coming out, it's soon more information to follow. There was no, I'm against this at that point. Only when we saw that it was popular opinion did this council divide. Those took the opportunity to set the hare amongst the hounds. We need to unify in our decision to make sure that this council is run as efficient and as cost benefit as possible. Let's put politics aside. We want this council to save all the money it can save. We want to deliver value for our residents. If we do that, we can enhance our residents' experiences here in Dorset. So let's stop playing politics. Let's do the right thing. It's been clearly explained in those briefings that it comes with efficiencies. Efficiencies lead to cost savings. We as a cabinet, and the leader and the cabinet lead on this, have listened to the outcries in certain areas. We've listened to the people that have made the noise, and we've assessed the HRC bookings in those areas. We don't need to go out to consult now. We have a situation where we're going forward with a plan, and it's the best way forward to protect the service for our residents, as the leader has already said, and to ensure that this council remains to run efficiently with cost savings in mind at every opportunity. I shall save my point on consultation to the question later on.
Councillor Sutton.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Claire Sutton, Rodwell and White Ward in Weymouth. Most of the points I was going to make have already been made, so I'm very deliberately not going to repeat them because it's a very hot evening and we don't all want to be saying the same thing, that's for sure. I too would prefer to just show up at my local tip. So I understand why many residents feel like that. However, I would also like more resources to support our children and young people with special educational needs. I would also like more resources to support our care leavers. There are all sorts of things that we would all like. We can't have all the things we want because of the financial situation we are in, which is the responsibility of central government. Nick Ireland has already made the point about adults and children's services. We're struggling, to be honest, in some of our statutory duties. We have to make difficult choices. It's been said that this was in the budget papers. We can't have a popular vote on everything that's in the budget papers. If we did that, we'd be bankrupt, you know. So I completely agree with a lot of the points made. Councillor Lacey-Clark, the comments have been really poor. Councillor Weller, yes, we really should respect our residents. And had we articulated this clearly and properly, I don't think we'd have been in this position. I'm not saying everyone would have supported it, but they wouldn't have been as angry as they are. So I think we absolutely have to acknowledge that. I'll leave it there, but I'll just say to the colleagues on the front bench here, you've been here, you know you have to make really difficult decisions, and you know you have to make decisions that aren't always popular, but you have to do it for the greater good sometimes. Thanks.
Councillor Took.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking Councillor Spencer Flower, who's sadly not here tonight, for helping us sort out the Summerley trip and get Dorset residents able to use the Summerley tip, where they have a queuing system, as Councillor Gibson referred to. It's been operating since COVID, and it works extremely well. There's no queues, but Dorset are paying Hampshire. And I'm really saddened that at the time that Councillor Flower and the rest of the party opposite made the decision to help fund the Summerley tip so that 15,000, 20,000 residents in Dorset could use it, that they didn't take the opportunity to extend that to other HRCs, which we knew were being used by people from out of county. And I see absolutely no reason why Dorset should not charge people from out of county. And the way we can do this is by having a booking system and a registration system. It's simple, it's easy, and it works extremely well. As Councillor Gibson said, I'm looking around the chamber, there's another 3 or 4 councillors I know use Summerley tip who are not here tonight, which is a shame. But I would simply urge people to say this is not a huge issue that needs to be dissected with a fine scalpel. It's a system that works brilliantly well. It's a system that we can use to help keep our savings intact. And it's a system that we can use to help us be more efficient. So it wins on 2 counts and it's not difficult to use. I really don't have a problem with it. Thank you.
Jefferson.
Councillor Sherry Jesperson, Hillforts and Upper Tarrantford. The way in which this whole matter has been handled has led to a massive reduction in public trust in this council and in this administration. We've heard a reference just now to this being not a huge issue. I can't remember recently a huger issue in terms of the information that we're getting into our inboxes about this. We've had a cabinet member there speaking in sneering terms, I'd have to use that word, about public opinion. Your public opinion is my residents' views. I think that you have handled this really, really badly. Now, what I would call on you to do is have the courage of your convictions. If you believe that this is a good policy, then explain to the residents the business case for how this is going to save money and how this is going to make our household recycling centres more efficient. Share the evidence that leads you to claim that it won't increase fly tipping, because we have seen a great deal of evidence that contradicts that. If you have evidence that it won't increase fly tipping, share it with your residents. Consult with our partner organisations, in particular the police, who have a very strong interest in fly tipping, because they're the ones that have to do the prosecutions. Why would you possibly think it's acceptable to ignore the police when we're making a major policy change? If your case is sound, you will convince the public. They're quite capable of understanding complex issues. There's still time to step back from this brink, consult the public, put this right, listen to our residents, and take them with us on this journey. And if your case is sound, you will convince them and they will support you. Thank you.
Councillor Quayle.
Thank you, Chairman. When I asked to speak, it was some time ago, so quite a lot of what I wanted to say has already been said. But there are some, I'll say it again. But there are some points that I wanted to make that when a cabinet member was speaking, it really bubbled up in me. I remember when I stood to be the county councillor for Blandford. The only reason why I did that, I didn't want to be a councillor, was that I simply thought the county council didn't listen to myself and other residents and the county councillor, etc. And I was so annoyed with that until somebody said, go and do something about it. So I thought I would do something about it, and I'm here now. And ever since LGR, when we were talking about LGR, everyone said, oh, if we get rid of the districts, we'll have this big, massive council that doesn't listen to the people. And we as councillors have to take that message to the people and make sure that consultations are there. And everyone agreed until the administration's changed. Now, all of a sudden, the party over there that always puts us out in their literature, we listen to you, aren't listening to the people. I disagree with Councillor Beryl earlier, because these are the people who are our boss. I don't work for Dorset Council. I work for the residents of Blandford Forum. I sit in this chamber to hold the administration to account, and if we were in the administration, to try and put the best thing forward. And Councillor Parry mentioned lots of consultations took place in the previous administration, and that is simply what we're asking. This is a massive issue. I've had hundreds of emails coming to my inbox in the recent weeks, not about SEN funding, etc., about this issue. These are the people that pay for this council. They are our boss, not a bunch of people in Dorchester who comes up with harebrained schemes. Can I also just touch on a point? There was in cabinet minutes that there would be a consultation. So do we stick to our word? I mean, that's what it's all about for me. It's about our word. And clearly, if you vote against this motion, you're voting against your word.
Councillor Christopher.
Councillor Simon Christopher, Marshall Vale Ward. I have to tell you that I've had more emails about this particular issue than any other issue. And the legal officer will back this up because I was forwarding emails to the senior leadership team. And they weren't just emails from farmers, they were people who presumably vote Lib Dem at a parliamentary election. We had an email from a former parliamentary candidate for the Lib Dems. We had priests emailing me saying this is all wrong. And it is all wrong. And it is clearly wrong. Bridport Town Council seem to have issues with it. Lyme Regis Town Council's dead against it. What a state of affairs. It is awful. In West Dorset, we have a brilliant recycling centre in Bridport. Councillor Bolwell will agree. It is superb. But I suspect the problem is that other areas in Dorset do not have such good recycling centres. And it hasn't escaped my attention. There's been quite a lot of building around Dorchester, but perhaps there hasn't been provision for better HRCs. And you are told by the Secretary of State that there will be more houses. And what are you going to do about it? What are your plans? Or are you going to bury your head in the sand? Maybe you should talk to developers about it. Go out and look for sites, new sites. Because you should do that. And why should you do that? Because at the start of this council, we were told and we voted for a climate emergency. And there are climate deniers, it seems, over this side, because they don't want more recycling. They don't want more recycling. Well, that's a bit strange, isn't it? Very strange indeed. But the trouble is that this can descend into the petty about who recycles where. And I'm going to finish with one point, and that is about the village of Thorncombe. And the village of Thorncombe, if you lived in Thorncombe, you would have a TA Taunton postcode. And you would look to a large extent for services from Somerset, bizarrely. If there was an incident in Thorncombe tonight that was worthy of the police being called, where would the police come from in all likelihood? Councillor Fry would probably have a good idea. They would probably come from Chard across the border because that's closer. And I don't think we should get bogged down in petty issues when councils are supposed to be working closer together. Thank you.
Councillor Sowery House.
Thank you, Chair. I find myself agreeing with Kate Weller, a member for Weymouth, who doesn't think that Dorset residents are stupid. I agree with her. They're absolutely not stupid. We know of huge advances, successes, and within our Dorset businesses that demonstrate exactly the opposite. However, I do take issue with the Dorset Police Crime Commissioner, David Sidgwick, over this, who does seem to think that Dorset residents are stupid. He was leading the charge with fly tipping and the risks that that would have across Dorset. I'm not sure if that's a doubt that he has within his own capacity, the Dorset Constabulary, or that Dorset residents are so stupid that once we move to a booking system, they're going to somehow go out and leave their litter in our fields and hedgerows. It's certainly not the experience. And the other side asks for evidence. The other 50% of the country that already operates the booking system doesn't have that experience. So there's one piece of evidence. I think we would all agree on all sides of this place that the comms on this were appalling. It let all of us down. However, I do have to congratulate the member for Marshwood Vale. No one does indignation quite as good as he does. I can assure him that this side of the chamber is absolutely not in denial of climate change, and actually those places where they have a booking system, they actually see recycling increase. So absolutely I support this. How the matter has been handled, said the member for Hillforts and Upper Tarrants. Well, to be honest with you, they always say, once something is on the internet, it's there forever. And I'm on the internet, and I watch a lot of communications that have come out from members on the other side of this chamber who have actively briefed against it and led the misinformation to members of the public who have then formed their opinions on that. So I would say that's where a lot of the mistrust and misunderstanding has come from on this matter. The member for Littlemore and Preston being one of those, and he will recognise those posts, I'm sure. So are we to make decisions on the basis of difficulty? Do we only go for the low fruit? Is that all we do? Because that's not effective leadership. There are none so offended as those who are led to believe that they should be offended. And I suggest that that is exactly what has happened with this. So to close, Madam Chairman, I find myself in complete agreement with Councillor Gibson, who, when I look back to the webinar, said, so it's really just to know who to direct the people to if it does get a bit noisy. So I presume at the moment we're in the midst of the noise. But in general, I mean, I fully support this. Well, Councillor Gibson, so do I. So that's at least two of us. But, well, thank you for the support.
Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Steve Mercer from the Blackmore Vale ward. Like many of you, I've been to parish council meetings this last week, and I've had my ear bent back by farmers talking about fly tipping. One farmer said to me yesterday that she'd had a cow die because it had eaten the contents of a bag which was fly tipped and thrown over her hedge. And two other farmers have said that to me. And I have been really taken aback by the level of objection people have conveyed to me. I personally go to the Sherborne tip. I love going to the tip. I find it very cathartic. I have also reported more than once fly tipping within a mile of the Sherborne tip. It was a chest freezer, I can remember it. For those of you that don't know the Sherborne tip, it is along a road called Westmill Lane, which is very narrow with passing places. If somebody gets turned away, they will just chuck their rubbish in this narrow little lane where nobody sees them. And if this really is an issue of cost, Councillor Andrews, you know how much Somerset are bringing into the Sherborne tip. Why not ask them for the money? You don't need a system to tell you. You seem to have that information. Thank you.
Right, we've still got 5 people to speak. If you're going to speak, can you speak on something that hasn't already been said, please? Our next speaker now is Councillor Northam.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Northam from Upway and Broadway in Weymouth. And I welcome the summary from Councillor Sutton, and I won't repeat what she said because I support that fully. I haven't had hundreds of emails from residents complaining about what we have. I have had conversations with a number of them, and having explained what's been explained about the benefits of moving to such a system, about the experience from other councils with such a booking system, and many of them are aware of such booking systems, I see that whilst this is change, and it's very common for people to object change, I can see the benefits of it. And I think the outrage is outrageous that people are so outraged about this, when to my mind, sadly, there are much larger concerns in the world and in Dorset. Thank you.
Councillor Vitale.
Thank you, Chairman. James Vitale from Stourbridge and Marnell. I'll make this intervention short, but it feels like we're having basically two conversations here, so I'm going to try and just bridge them before Councillor O'Leary wraps up shortly. The position of the Conservative group is not that there's a problem to be solved. It's not that we need to make tough decisions. It's not that we need to reform the service. It's that we disagree with your proposed solution and we think it's half-baked and it will have unintended consequences. There are three false arguments that have been advanced this evening, which I just think need addressing head on. The first is that we need to do this to solve our broader financial situation. That is false. That is not true. The second one is that the only way to make this particular service more efficient is the proposal that you have given to the council. That is false. And the third false argument that's been made this evening is that efficiencies have to be made here in a service that works well rather than in any other area, particularly those ones where you've made significant spending commitments since the budget. This is a big issue. It's a big issue because it's a service that we run well. And when residents say, yes, you're doing a good job, you should listen to them. You are the Liberal Democrats. It's in your name. It's very surprising that you would take exception to us being responsive to what our constituents say to us. I agree with Councillor Jesperson. If you believe that this is the right policy, it's the right move, it's a tough choice, but you think that in the long run it will pay off, go out and sell it. Go out and sell it, and this motion will let you do that. And go and sell it to people in North Dorset who feel genuinely ignored and are extremely worried and confused as to why we have to be the guinea pigs for the rest of the council. Thank you.
Councillor Crabb.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Richard Crabb, Sherborne West Ward. So far, I've only had 3 emails objecting to the booking system on the HRC. And when I speak to people, they can see the benefits. Because people use booking every day for booking surgery appointments, for booking for meals at a restaurant, and you can do it on the phone, and it just takes minutes. It's so easy. And unfortunately, there's so much misinformation out there. So therefore, I simply cannot support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Starr.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Starr, Andrew Starr from Upton and Litchett. I'd firstly like to say that I believe that the issue about dumping waste is not down to members of the public. That's why other councils that have tried this haven't found that it's been a problem. It's people that are unlawfully evading their status, their pretend status as someone who's got a licence to dump. But the main thing about this, I think, is it is a big issue. I agree it's a big issue. In fact, it's nearly as big as the issue when we were asked to start putting our bins out once a fortnight. That was dreadful. The world was going to end. Turns out it didn't. And we'll carry on after this. In a year's time, everyone will realise it's a good idea and they'll see the benefits. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Skeets.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Andy Skeets from Westmoors and Three-Legged Cross. I don't think I really planned to actually speak tonight, but when I heard Beryl Izzard say that this is not one of the main things, I hear a Liberal Democrat telling my residents this is not one of the main things. And I'm afraid it is. Get out on social media, go and meet your people that vote for you. They will tell you that this is a very, very important key thing that will be on their mind. David Took said it's not a main thing. It is a main thing. It's a thing that people think about a lot. And I think the thing that upset me most was the fact that we sit here and there's some really good councillors here, and on the whole, in my opinion, the Nolan principles are pretty much covered and carried. But tonight, I'm a bit perturbed by what I hear, because you're talking about something that fundamentally affects almost every resident in Dorset, and you're saying it's not important enough to have consultation. Consultation is a really big, key thing. And I can't believe that Lib Dems that I know will vote against this, because you'd be voting against consultation. I cannot believe that you could sit there and actually put up with that. And if you've been pulled to one side to vote for something different, then I think it's a damn shame. I looked down at the council agenda tonight, and I was just looking to see what consultation had taken place. And Steve Robinson, portfolio holder, on page 31 said something like, "I absolutely agree that the council has a powerful voice when it comes to raising awareness of consultation and the value of people and groups responding." If that's the case, how can you possibly do something to change and have, 2 U-turns are we on now, or is it 3? We started off with one thing, we've now had 2 U-turns, and now we're somewhere else. One glove does not fit all. In West Moors, where I live, we tend to use Summerley Tip, same as Simon Gibson has said. And Simon clearly said that some of his residents are quite happy with that system. He also said many of his residents weren't. But that particular tip, for me, as somebody that's been in engineering, it's a good example of a well-ordered and well-run recycling and rubbish centre. So, as far as I'm concerned, that particular instance, it works, okay? It does not work in other places. If you don't have that structure, you don't have that organisation, and you don't have that communication with your residents, I don't know how you can choose to ignore consultation. I really don't understand it, baffles me, so I'll shut up now.
The last speaker before the seconder will be Councillor Robinson.
By coincidence, I've never been quoted in chambers before. That's quite exciting. It's not as good as... I'll think of another one. Bear with. I want to speak from another perspective, sort of as Councillor Keats mentioned, but what happens when you do have a consultation? Because it's not as if having a consultation on something is ever really going to fix the issue now. It's just going to make the argument go on and on and on and create more and more division within communities. And I agree with Councillor Keats that actually democracy in action is a powerful thing. And that's why I would point out to Councillor that democratically, the Liberal Democrats won a majority in the last election. But we're working on it. But I would also say that actually for democracy, seriously, for democracy to work, it needs to work at every level. And it needs to work in this chamber as much as it works on the streets. And there are some decisions, and there are some policies, and there are some ways forward that shouldn't necessarily always be taken on the streets because there are nuances. There are levels of discussion that actually needs to happen between people who have full access to all the information and then can make decisions on behalf of their electorates. And that's what we're here to do in this chamber, to assess the information and then to vote on it on behalf of our electorate. And I think, quite honestly, that's where we have failed to perform effectively. I think when we talk about the consultation that we're going to shortly on the day opportunities, that's an example of a consultation that could have been better. And I'll say why. Because when we launched the consultation, I had representation from numerous councillors coming, knocking on my door, metaphorically, but sitting down with me over coffee and talking the issues through so we could come to decisions and come to agreements and come to understandings together. Councillor Jeans and Councillor Beer came to represent their ward really powerfully. They made very clear to me that actually, yes, we're Liberal Democrats, but actually we're the ward members and we're here to represent the wards and this is what we think. And if we don't like it, we're going to stand up against you. And we discussed the issue and we came to agreement and we came to understanding of the facts. But it wasn't just the Liberal Democrats. Councillor Borden came and knocked on the door and we had a cup of coffee and we talked about, and Councillor Borden doesn't have day opportunities in Lyme Regis, but she wants more, and she came and we talked it through, because that's the way we should be operating in this chamber. For the independents, Hannah Hobbs-Chell came and spoke to me, and it got to the point where when Hannah walked into the room, I wanted to hide behind the chair because she was so advocating so strongly for her people in Ferndown. And Councillor Weller sat me down and told me exactly what was going to happen. I was not having any arguments over it. It's very sad that as a part of that consultation, no Conservatives came and spoke to me. And I'm saddened by that, because my door is just as much open to people of the Conservative hue as they are from the other members. So can I ask that as we go forwards, we prayed before the meeting tonight that we disagree well. And as we go forward in this administration, can I open the door and just say, if you have issues, let's talk it through, let's represent our wards, let's deal with these issues as they go forward. But this is something that was decided, it was part of the budget cafes, it's something we all knew about, and let's not turn it into a massive public argument about something that actually is very much common sense.
Right, no, actually, there were two more left on the list, so I've got to Councillor Taylor now. No, you've spoken once.
No right to reply. Okay, thank you, Madam Chairman. Jill Taylor, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health and Ward Member for Chickerell. I wasn't going to speak tonight. I really wasn't, because so many people have already spoken, and it's really hot in this chamber, and I think we've probably just about getting to the end of the debate. But I just wanted to make a couple of comments on it. Councillor Skeets, I'm really interested in what you said about your residents, because the evidence we've got is most of them go over to Hampshire in Summerley for their waste, rather than going to Wimborne, which would be... And that is an area that they have to book. So, you know, I'm not quite understanding that. But the other thing that I wanted to point out was everyone's talked about the consultation that should have been. If you dig back in the papers, the consultation that should have been involved things like how many hours we were going to have the tips open, how many days we were going to have the tips open for. There were real closures, how many tips we were going to close. This was what we were going to consult on. So the fact that all that we've done is basically said we're putting in a booking system to stop all that, actually, it's not something to me that is really worth consulting on. I personally have had no emails. I've had not one on this. So having said this tonight, I'll probably get a load coming in, but I have not had one to date, which I find really interesting, particularly as we swapped within the group the emails, and they all look exactly the same. So somebody somewhere is organising the emails that are coming into us. So what I'm saying is basically, I'm not sure what this debate is about. We had this really powerful presentation, just the last person to speak, Councillor Robinson, and he's absolutely right. We should all be working together in this chamber. This is ridiculous, having spent so much time on something which is actually relatively minor in the scheme of things. If we were going to look at closures, if we were going to look at hours, changing the hours, then yes, it would be a problem, and we should absolutely change that. And just out of interest, my brother lives in the Midlands, and I said to him, have you got a booking system? And he said, no, but I wish we had. His tip is closed 3 days a week, and he said there's so much fly tipping going on around him, it hacks him off. He spends all his time basically reporting it in. Thank you.
This is the last one before Councillor O'Leary. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Chairman. None of us like change at all, but we have to have change to be efficient, to have cost savings. And if we have cost savings, and efficiency, we all benefit in the end. I've not had any emails at all about this, but I have consulted and kept my parish councils informed of what's going on. The comms didn't do a very good job, but, you know, we have to communicate to our parish councils. But one thing with this motion that I just find very difficult is they talk about consultation and they talk about with ward members. Well, who decides what ward members are consulted with each HMRC? Because I've not got one in my ward, but a lot of people in my area use it in Blandford. So, you know, I think this is a chamber where decisions have to be made, and we need to get on and do it.
Thank you. Now the seconder of the motion, Councillor O'Leary.
Thank you, Chairman. It might surprise members to know that on this subject I do have an opinion. I just want to correct a few things and to speak on a few things. Councillor talked about being non-political, and so did Councillor Taylor, and there's Liberal Democrats hearing them say, let's not be political, let's put politics aside. There's like one cockerel saying to another, please stop crowing. You know, when they were on that side in opposition and we were in administration, they were the most political people ever, the Liberal Democrats. They were every hocus-focus leaflet attacked, every issue. We had it every time. God knows how many went out in my ward. I was the worst thing going. In terms of being the worst thing going, come back to Councillor for Corfe Mullen, I assume he means me and not Councillor Dickinson when he said the Councillor for Little Preston. If you think I've stirred this up as some Ian Paisley-like figure that's routed the people of Dorset to arms on this issue, then I'm very flattered, but my ego needs no more massage than it already has. Yes, it is. It's one thing we do have in common, isn't it? But I am not going to get into rights and wrongs of a tip booking system here this evening. I think members have made up their minds. And we know that there is issues with this. If not, there wouldn't have been one U-turn, there wouldn't have been another U-turn. There wouldn't have been Bridport Lib Dem Town Council putting a motion forward. There wouldn't have been all these things. There wouldn't be the telephone conversations and the post-committee conversations of backbench Liberal Democrats, and there wouldn't be the Facebook messages from independents and others saying that they agreed with us on this matter. There wouldn't be these things. This would have carried on if it was so glorious and so fine and there was no issues with it. It would have carried on. I'm not going to get into, I've had emails, I haven't had emails, Ralph, no one really cares on that subject. But I want to address my remarks tonight to backbench Liberal Democrats, to the Independents and the Greens, and Labour, thank you. For the first 5 years as a councillor, I was a backbench member of the governing party. I viewed my role, in part, to look at issues based on conscience and to devote the way I felt best for my constituents. I was not here, and you are not here, to represent Cabinet or to be voting fodder for Cabinet's decisions, and in this case, Cabinet's mistakes. On several occasions, I voted with the opposition on various items. Sometimes in this chamber, I've been the only member out of 82 to vote one way on an issue. And that's because I believe you should vote on a conscience if you're not bound by collective responsibility of Cabinet. If there's visual proof the Conservative group doesn't operate a whip, I'm living testament to it. Just ask the front bench down there. So if you do believe on that side with us that residents' views should be taken into account, that we need to consult on this big change that most residents will genuinely deal with every day. We hear about SEND, we hear about adult services. Those are vitally important issues, but I'm afraid they don't affect the vast majority of residents. This one might be minor in terms of cost, and putting a book ticking system in the tip isn't going to save children's services, far from it. The savings for this are going to be minuscule in the big scheme of things. So if you agree with us and you think this has been handled horrendously by an executive cabinet that seemed to have little regard for those without a seat, then please support our motion. To vote against this would reinforce a growing perception, or perhaps reveal a reality, that Liberal Democrat members are whipped by party discipline and that Green and Independent members are whipped through cabinet positions in committee chairmanships. So let us please return back power to the backbenchers and to the members of this chamber and right the wrongs of this shambolic last month and vote to scrap this unwanted, unneeded waste of time system and dump this rubbish. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now have the vote, and as it's a recorded vote, your names will be read out. Is that right? No, not now. No, okay. That's the old-fashioned way of doing it. Right, you'll vote in the normal way, but your names will be displayed on the screen. I've been doing this too long that I'm going back the old way where you had your names read out.
The vote is now open. Councillor Brenton, could you vote for me again, please? And Councillor Rowland Tarr, would you mind voting, please? Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. The vote is now closed. The result of the vote are 24 in favour, 44 against, 1 abstention. The motion is therefore lost.
And your names will appear in the minutes. Some Dorset councillors. The first question is by Councillor Monks.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Craven's Bedminster Ward. So my question is, can the council provide an update on the recent cuts to grant funding for towns and parishes involved in designing neighbourhood plans and clarify what support will be available moving forward? Thank you.
Your answer will go with the next question because it's similar. So, Councillor Vitali, can you ask yours, please?
Chairman, I'm very happy to pull my question. It's very, very similar.
Councillor Bartlett will respond to both those two questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Shane Bartlett, Cabinet Member for Planning and Emergency Planning, Ward Member for Wimble Minster. And can I thank Councillor Monks and Councillor Vitali for your questions. Okay. Councillor Shane Bartlett, Cabinet Member for Planning and Emergency Planning, Ward Member for Wimble Minster. And can I thank Councillor Monks and Councillor Vitali for their questions. The Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government has informed locality that as a result of spending review, they cannot proceed with commissioning new neighbourhood planning support services for 2025 onwards. Unfortunately, this means that the locality will not open applications for new grants or technical support. The locality are able to complete all technical support packages agreed by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government by the end of March 2025 and have until the end of March 2026 to do so, depending on the timetable of each package. Dorset Council has a duty to assist in neighbourhood plan preparation, but this extends principally to arranging and paying for the neighbourhood plan examination, arranging the referendum and formally making and adopting the neighbourhood plan, as well as providing some technical guidance and advice. Unfortunately, Dorset Council's community planning team will be unable to fill the void left by locality funding over and above the support we are required to provide. Our priority will need to be the local plan, and if town and parish councils wish to proceed with neighbourhood plans, they will have to think about the resource they require to fund these. For those parts of Dorset Council area that have a community infrastructure levy, CIL, charging schedule in place, there may be scope to use their neighbourhood proportion of CIL passed to town and parish councils for neighbourhood planning related work. And I do appreciate the concern that ward members will have for the parishes and towns that are in their areas, and I'm happy to take up this conversation with you both outside of this room. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Question 3 by Councillor Brenton is on a similar issue.
Although I am ward member for Litchett and Upton ward, this actually is a question from Morden Parish Council. We understand that the Dorset local plan is being prepared for consultation this summer, but as yet have not had much information about what it may contain. Neighbourhood plans are the means by which local ideas are given weight in the planning process. We are concerned that now central funding for preparation of neighbourhood plans has been stopped. It will be totally unaffordable for small parishes with tiny precepts to produce a full neighbourhood plan. The assumption until now has been that villages without a settlement boundary in the Greenbelt can only have rural exception sites, which are 100% social housing. This greatly reduces the landowner's wish to provide land for such housing. In smaller villages, the facilities are actually the people in the community. Without active people, small villages wither and die. This has been ignored in the settlement and housing hierarchy in the past. However, in view of the national and Dorset push to build more houses, small proportionate mixed development growth in small villages should not be ignored. Can the Cabinet Member for Planning detail what consideration is there in the local plan to take into account the views of a rural community who have a housing need and a desire for small mixed developments, but can only attempt to afford a neighbourhood plan? And what help, therefore, is Dorset continuing to provide to allow local views to be incorporated into planning policy?
Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Brenton, for your question. In terms of the first part of your question, I refer to the answer I gave to Councillor Monks and Councillor Vitale. To the second part of your question, the local plan consultation will be starting on the 18th of August and will include options for development sites as well as some key policy issues. Local plan policies must take account of national policy, including that on Greenbelt, which indicates that new buildings in the Greenbelt are generally inappropriate, as they fail to maintain its openness and prevent urban sprawl. There will be the opportunity during the consultation for all communities to respond with their views on matters such as this. Thank you.
Question 4, submitted by Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Peter Dickinson, Littlemore, Sutton Point and Preston. As my two questions have been lumped into one question, I'll ask both questions now and hopefully I'll get two answers. So, what funds were received by Dorset Council to help defray extra spending while the Bibby Stockholm was birthed in Portland? And did this excuse Dorset Council from supplying any other beds to accommodate asylum seekers? My second question, are Dorset taking part in any of the government asylum dispersal grant schemes or any other incentive scheme to accommodate newly arrived immigrants, and what are the financial implications to Dorset Council?
Councillor Taylor will respond.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor, Cabinet Member for Housing and Health. And thank you very much for your question, Councillor Dickinson. Dorset Council received approximately £1.4 million of grant funding for DC activity in relation to the BB Stockholm barge. These funds were paid by the Home Office in accordance with their formula, a payment of 3.5k per occupier bed at a fixed point in time. These funds were spent in support of a wide range of activities necessary for the Council to provide additional services related to the BB Stockholm being docked in Portland Port, with no additional draw on Dorset Council finances. At the end of 24-25, Dorset Council held a small underspend of less than £100,000 from the total received, largely due to the BB Stockholm project being ended slightly earlier than its original contract. The Home Office have stated that they expect the underspend to be returned. The exact figure to be returned is yet to be finalised between Dorset Council and the Home Office. The Home Office run a programme of property acquisition across the whole of the UK, where their contractors manage and maintain temporary accommodation for people awaiting their asylum decision. This is named the Asylum Dispersal Accommodation Programme and is run by the Home Office, so is not a function of Dorset Council. There are currently 5 leased properties in the Dorset Council area under the management of the Home Office's contractor. These have had minimal impact on the Council's services to date. This includes having no impact on the Council's duty to permanently house people within that programme, as they are awaiting a decision on the right to remain in the UK and do not qualify during that period. Council officers are part of the South West Migration Partnership Board and join other local authorities in monitoring progress in the Home Office's plans for asylum dispersal and to feedback any concerns or areas of action. Thank you.
Thank you. Question 5, submitted by Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Councillor Piers Brown, and I represent the Cranbourne Chase ward. In the former East Dorset District Council area, Dorset Council owns and operates a number of septic tanks and sewage treatment works that serve predominantly small groups of ex-authority properties in rural areas, many of which are now reaching the end of their operational life and need replacement. You can imagine the anger and dismay when it became public that plans for one of the replacements in the village of Witchhampton would include post-secondary sewage treatment being discharged into the River Alum. For those that don't know much about the sewage treatment work process, that means the physical items have been removed and you're left predominantly with the chemical residue of that, so high levels of nitrogen, phosphate, and also bacteria. The River Alum is one of only 200 chalk streams in the world and is hopefully, within the next few months, will be the first globally to have a management plan with all landowners on both banks extending from its start to its end. Therefore, will the portfolio holder commit to changing Dorset Council's plans to install a discharge pipe into the River Alum at Witchhampton from the planned Dorset Council-owned sewage treatment works?
The response will come from the Leader of Council, Councillor Ireland.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Piers, Councillor Brown. I'm responding because I've got climate and environment rather than Councillor Andrews. I've got some preamble. I've got an official answer, but so I believe this was approved under your previous administration, but that's what I'm told by Mr. Wiltshire. But when I first read your question, my first two thoughts is, why is Dorset Council running a sewage treatment plant? Because I didn't know. And swiftly followed by, there's no way we can allow this, was my knee-jerk response. So the answer to first is historic, as you've explained, inherited way back. But more importantly, the answer to the second is that the plant just treats human waste and doesn't take rainwater or surface drainage. And that's crucial because it means it won't overflow into the river, i.e. only water treated to above Environment Agency standards will ever be discharged, unlike water company sewage outlets, which can and do, unfortunately, discharge untreated sewage onto our beaches all too frequently. So essentially, you won't get any turds floating down the River Allen from this plant. But the official answer, and I'll read this out, is the 19 properties at 5 Ash Cottages in Witchhampton are served by an ageing 1980s treatment works. These facilities are near end of life and will need to be replaced to prevent untreated wastewater from entering the environment. The replacement for this facility will provide an upgrade to modern standards, protecting the environment and providing reassurance to residents, or maybe not. We have worked closely with the Environment Agency on this matter, and with their agreement, the cleaned discharge water will meet their strict standards, helping to safeguard ecology and protect river water quality. Where the current system is so old, the water is currently being removed by tankers. The new system will prevent the need for this, removing the carbon emissions, reducing costs, and eliminating the impact on the village from the tanker movements.
Thank you. The next question, question 6, also by Councillor Brown. Yes, you can. Yes, yes.
Is that okay, Chair? Yeah, thank you. Just wanted to pick up on a couple of bits there. So the discharge that will be put into the river will have higher levels of things like nitrates, which we know has a massive impact both on the Poole Bay and therefore a knock-on effect on our ability to build houses and deliver those locally. And the idea that just because there won't be storm events which would categorise complete raw sewage going into the river, I think underestimates the strength of public feeling around this. And to a certain degree, feels a little bit of do as I say, not as I do, bearing in mind the National Liberal Democrats' position on this matter. So could I ask for, at the very least, representation from the leader at a public meeting so he can articulate this to residents at a point in the future, and a commitment, and this is going to sound flippant, but if you are that confident in it, we drink a glass of water of it afterwards.
Councillor Ireland.
I will have to give you a written response. Thank you.
Point of order, Chair.
You could have had, but you didn't ask for one. Right, Councillor Brown, you've got another question. Question 6.
Sorry. Last year, I asked the Liberal Democrats and Green coalition to back the next generation of farmers, and sadly, my concerns around county farms were shrugged off, literally as well as metaphorically. And to this day, the sword of Damocles hangs over its head. But so today, I wanted to take the opportunity to ask the administration to back the current generation of farmers and food producers here in Dorset. So will the portfolio holder, who I appreciate isn't here this evening, use the new freedoms within the government procurement framework to source more products locally, directly backing the Dorset pound, Dorset businesses and Dorset food producers?
Councillor Ireland.
I'm responding on behalf of the portfolio holder. I didn't realise I was in the coalition, but because I'm not. I got that wrong. No. That's not a coalition. Where are we? So the response...
Can we have the answer to the question, please?
So, it was on. Yes, we intend to make full use of the freedoms provided under the Procurement Act 2023 to enhance local sourcing and strengthen the Dorset economy. Dorset Council's procurement strategy prioritises maximising the Dorset pound, and the new Act provides additional tools to do so more effectively whenever possible. For example, under the competitive flexible procedure, we can design procurement processes that better accommodate local suppliers, including Dorset-based SMEs. We continue to conduct pre-market engagement to raise awareness among local suppliers. We embed social value and corporate social responsibility into our procurement decisions, ensuring that public spending delivers tangible benefits to our communities. Local participation is encouraged, provided this is done in line with the principles of fairness, transparency and non-discrimination.
Okay, Councillor Brown.
Great news. Thank you. And there we go, some cross-party working. We're getting there already. Last September, I had the opportunity to attend the Love Local, Buy Local awards ceremony, which was held a couple of days before the Dorset County Show, and it highlighted some of the amazing food and farm producers here in Dorset. A visible sign of the leaders' commitment to back local would be to stock the Dorset Council staff canteen with local Dorset food instead of the mass-produced stuff that currently fits within it, is served within it. Dorset food, as we know, is high quality, high welfare.
Sorry, is this a great question, not a statement?
High quality, high welfare, and good for the environment. So can he commit to that small but symbolic change?
Councillor Ireland.
In the absence of the portfolio holder, I can't really answer that, but I do agree we do have very high quality food. And in my own ward, we have Craig's Farm Dairy, and I'd very much like to see their produce in County Hall. So we'll see what we can do.
Question 7, submitted by Councillor Legg.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Robin Legg, Councillor for Sherborne Rural. On Monday, the Audit Committee reconvened to consider a report into financial irregularities at the authority in a closed session. At what point will that report be made available to other members? How are we to learn from the changes in processes and procedures needed if elements of the report are to remain the subject of exempt information exclusions?
Island.
Thank you, Councillor Legg. So the business conducted by Audit and Governance Committee on Monday the 7th of July was a very detailed, confidential report of an investigation conducted by our internal auditors. Like other councillors, my instinct is to be as open and transparent as we can be, but sometimes the subject matter and the findings of reports from our internal auditors are confidential for the Audit and Governance Committee only. If the Council is to be able to learn from the investigation, then the overall findings do need to be shared, even if there is a level of detail that must remain confidential. The focus of the meeting on Monday was to ensure that the Council learns lessons from the investigation report and that information will be shared with all councillors eventually. I cannot provide Councillor Legg with a date at this time, but officers will continue to work closely with members of the committee to bring forward information as soon as possible.
Okay, Councillor Legg.
Question 8.
Do you want another question for that one, or do you move on to your next question? Question 8, submitted by Councillor Legg.
On to my next question, Madam Chairman. The Highway Authority is proposing to close the crossing of the A30 dual carriageway from Morrell Lane to Old Compton Road, following the receipt of a Regulation 28 letter from Dorset's senior coroner on the conclusion of the most recent inquest. Will there be a comprehensive study of current traffic flows in the roads likely to be impacted by a closure of the crossing before implementation of a temporary traffic regulation order to that effect? And will the authority undertake to carry out any works necessary to ease the resulting changes in traffic flows?
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor John Andrews, Sherborne East. Thank you for the question, Councillor Legg. As you know, there have been multiple serious collisions at this junction, including several fatalities. In response to the fatal collisions, we have outlined our intentions and actions to His Majesty's Coroner, which includes introducing a temporary traffic regulation order, or TTRO, to restrict movements at this junction. These restrictions will prevent all right turn, U-turn and straight over movements. However, left turn movements onto the and off the A30 at Marl Lane and Old Compton Lane will still be permitted. Due to the high risk of this location, the Council intends to install central barriers at the end of the summer to enforce these changes once an order is in place. A traffic flow study has already been conducted, indicating relatively low levels of usage at the junction. Once the barriers are installed, continuous monitoring will be carried out using video cameras to assess the effectiveness of the restrictions, including their impact on other local roads and junctions. Within the 18-month period of the temporary traffic regulation order, we will monitor results based on these. We will monitor the results. Based on these results, we will consult with the community and other stakeholders to consider to making the order permanent as it would be in a TRO. Speeding has been identified as a significant factor to contributing to collisions at this junction and along the A30 between Yeovil and Sherborne. A 2022 speed survey revealed that a substantial number of drivers were exceeding the speed limit, with over 200 vehicles per day travelling faster than 80 miles an hour, some exceeding 100 miles an hour, and some even doing 120 miles an hour. This survey was conducted before the 60 mile an hour speed limit was introduced in October 2024. We are now conducting new surveys to determine if this pattern of speeding continues. The effort is partly a feasibility study to the installation of average speed cameras, and we were carried out in collaboration with Dorset Police, who are one of our partners. These options require significant capital outlay, underscoring Dorset County's Dorset Council's commitment to improving road safety on the A30 and particularly the Loscombe Crossroads, as we know it locally. We will commit to keep local councillors updated as the project progresses.
Okay.
Could I follow that up with a supplementary, John? It's true to say that it's true to say that the parish councils in the area are hugely supportive of reducing the death toll at this location, which has been identified by the council's own road safety manager as the most dangerous crossing point in the county. You've properly identified the real problem, which is speeding. Conversations I've had in this last...
Can you have your question, please?
With highway safety officers on the question of average speed cameras, the real problem and cost of the average speed cameras is the intransigence of Scottish and Southern electricity networks about getting an electrical connection for the cameras. They won't allow us, apparently, to connect to the existing main electricity supply. Can we actually accelerate that programme?
Sorry, a question, please, Councillor Legg.
The question, Madam Chairman, is can we give priority to accelerating the introduction of average speed cameras? Because that's the real thing that needs to be done here.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Councillor. I can't answer that question now. I will talk to the road safety manager about that tomorrow, maybe next week, but I will talk to him about it.
Question 9, submitted by Councillor Northam.
Thank you, Chair. At the previous full council meeting, I thought the behaviour of a large number of members of the Conservative group who left the chamber before a group of residents under item 11 presented a deputation on Dorset Pension Fund investment in companies enabling crimes against humanity in Gaza and the West Bank and violations of Palestinian rights. I thought that was most disrespectful. As a councillor, it's our duty to listen to our residents' opinions, particularly when they have taken the trouble to formally present their views and questions at our council meeting.
We'll consult with them. With your question.
Thank you. I'm disappointed that their individual absence is not recorded in the minutes of the council meeting. The minutes merely record under item 10 that at this point in the meeting, several members temporarily withdrew from the meeting and subsequently rejoined prior to the commencement of the deputation on the Pathways to Work Green Paper. Nothing is recorded under item 11, deputations. I note that under item 14, the names of the members who left the chamber are recorded. I'd like to point out that members' presence is required during Weymouth Town Council meetings and their individual attendance is noted along with any leaving and returning during a meeting. The fact that the minutes records only several members does not reflect what I consider was a large number of Conservative members walking out. It's important that attendance is recorded throughout a meeting. Please, can the standing orders be reviewed and amended to require that members who leave the chamber are recorded as having left the chamber, not listen to an agenda item or taken part in any debate or vote, and then record that they have returned?
Councillor Ireland will respond.
Thank you, Councillor Northam, for your question. I will certainly ask officers to review the standing orders against those of other councils. Any proposed changes would be a recommendation from the Ordinance Governance Committee to full council. The current practice is if that a councillor declares an interest in an item of business and leaves the chamber, then this and the reason for leaving are recorded in our minutes. Officers have commented to me that if a member simply leaves the chamber without such a declaration, then they cannot speculate in the minutes about what the member's reason for leaving might be. Of course, that doesn't mean that we can't change things to simply record the fact that they actually left. Leave it with me.
Councillor Northam. Question 10, submitted by Councillor Quayle.
Thank you, Chairman. Byron Quayle, Blandford Forum. While I welcome the decision to keep the Blandford Day Centre open, as sole shareholder in Care Dorset, can the administration reflect on the consultation process, which many carers and residents felt was poorly communicated, lacked transparency, and caused unnecessary distress? Therefore, will Dorset Council be seeking a review to influence and ensure future consultations like this are genuinely inclusive, timely, and responsive to the community concerns?
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Councillor Quayle. A greater politician than I once said that he had a dream where people could actually live together in harmony, and we're just not achieving that, really, are we? I really genuinely wish that we could just communicate effectively rather than in the turmoil of the chamber. In response to your question, first of all, the consultation was not done by Care Dorset, it was done by Dorset Council. Care Dorset is one of the providers that we use, but it was with the aim of seeking not the use of the day centres per se, it was for what day services can we provide within a community, and put all the cards on the table and say, what do people want? And so to that end, the officers commenced the consultation as a genuine listening exercise to ensure there was a good opportunity for users of the centre and for the carers to feedback. The initial proposal was always intended as to be a starting point for wider conversations, which has, as you've reflected in your question, led to a shift in thinking. As we've learnt more, as we've listened to petitions, as I say, from Councillor Beer, Councillor James, and others, we've changed our thinking. We've changed, and so it's good news for the people of Blandford and for the people of Dorset, because I want to see a Dorset where people of all ages and all backgrounds are treated equally. We don't have to travel for tens of miles to get to services that we so desperately need, but we can meet those services within our own communities. There will be further engagement and co-production to develop the Blandford Centre as a vital resource for all of the community, considering the diverse nature of local residents' needs. I didn't write that bit, that's a very official bit. The diverse nature of residents' needs, and they will be central in our thinking. The day services that we commission will focus on building independence for people who need services and utilising local resources in the most effective and efficient way. So we do want to see services continue in the buildings, but we want to see services continue in the community as well. And I know that people from all backgrounds and all parties have got experience in that. And I would really encourage everyone to work together towards achieving that goal, that dream, that vision.
Okay, Councillor Quayle.
Thank you, Chairman, and appreciate the response. Then could I ask that the next time Dorset Council holds a consultation like they held there, that the information is actually correct, that they consult with the local people there beforehand and not tell them what they need as opposed to what they want, because that's exactly what happened.
Councillor Robinson.
One of the reasons that we went out to consultation in the first place was because we didn't have the information. And so we had to go out and find out what was actually going on. Before COVID, we had a different world, particularly in the provision of care services, provision in the of residential care as well. And COVID changed everything. A lot of the charities, a lot of the groups that existed pre-COVID no longer existed. Others, brilliant ones, have come into fruition and are now delivering services. The Councillor for Stemminster Newton has developed some remarkable stuff since COVID. And so we wanted to find out what is now the picture going on in communities. And so that is why we had the data collection, and that is why we've had the consultation. Going forward, all councillors were invited to webinars to find out different views and to hear from that. And it is unfortunate that not all the views of those webinars, not all the positivity of the vision that we had got through to communities. So we'll be trying to do things differently and better, but it would be much better if we all work together to achieve that with one voice.
Thank you. Councillor Quayle, you've got another question, question 11.
Thank you, Chairman. And my second question is, in light of declining public trust in local government, what steps is the Council taking to ensure meaningful public consultation is embedded in all major decisions, rather than treated as procedural afterthought, or clearly not at all?
Councillor Hope.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ryan Hope, portfolio holder for customer culture and community engagement. Firstly, thank you very much for your question, Councillor Quayle. Been a topic this evening, consultation, hasn't it already? Let me be clear that the public consultation is not a formality. Is not just a formality for Dorset Council. It is a key part on how we work. We do not treat this as a tick box exercise. We believe that listening to people is essential for making good decisions. Okay. This links directly to our council priority, Communities for All. This means that we want every voice in Dorset to be heard, no matter where someone lives or what their background is. We have a clear consultation and engagement policy. This guides how we will involve residents, businesses, and other groups in shaping decisions. We consult when the law says we must, for example, in planning, but also when it's simply the right thing to do. We use different ways to hear from people, including online surveys, public meetings, workshops, speaking directly to groups who are not often heard, a dedicated website where people can see all the information and give feedback on consultations. We are serious about involving all parts of Dorset, towns, villages, coasts, countryside, and we must make sure it's politically fair and balanced. Listening, engaging, and acting is what matters. This is how we build stronger communities for all.
Councillor Quayle.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm delighted with what you said. I fully agree with that or support that. So in that light, will you simply consult on the recycling policy then?
Thank you very much, Councillor Quayle. I thought that may have been the follow-up. I think we've debated that long enough this evening. We've come to the position. And as I've said, it wasn't legally required. We had planned to do a full consultation when we were looking at severe cuts, as have already been mentioned during the debate. However, introducing a booking system is not going to change the service provision that we're supplying to our residents.
Yeah, before we move on to question 12, I think Councillor Dickinson is very concerned that he didn't ask a supplementary question at the time. So I think if you want a very quick supplementary question, it might not have an answer. It has to be just a question on the asylum seeker.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. It was just to say to Councillor Taylor, thank you for the detailed response, and I look forward to reading it properly when it's written down and sent to me. And as I'm sure she, like me, everybody wants homes for everybody.
Thank you for that. We now move on to question 12, submitted by Councillor Leary.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Don't worry, John, it's not about HRCs. Beverley Road in Littlemore, which is right near Home Bargains, as you all know, has been without a road sign for almost a year now. I've been told this is due to them being short-staffed in the signage department and they have a large amount of work on hand. I've also been told there's a recruitment freeze on staff for this department. Can I ask that this freeze be lifted and we can resume this vital service back to normal?
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Leary, for your avid question, and I'm sure the people of Beverley Road will enjoy being able to get home and see where they live. Our internal shine shop has been at a peak in demand. I mean, a real peak in demand. It couldn't cope, which is beyond the amount of work we should have been expect our employers to be able to deliver. So help with this Our private sector partners, Heidelberg Materials, will be assisting in the sign replacement programme to pick up the extra work. This particular road sign will be replaced by the end of August. As for the recruitment, 2 more sign shop operatives have been given the recruitment go-ahead through the recruitment protocol, so that we are able to employ 2 more people because it's frontline services and we're desperately in need of them. There's so many signs being produced at the moment.
Supplementary, Councillor Leary?
Yeah, very brief and friendly one. That's a good sign. And thank you very much. And I'll ask for a kiss later in the pub to say thank you for that sign, John. I'm very pleased with that. And I'll tell the people of Beverley Road they'll be able to find their way home.
Right, Councillor Leary, you've got question 13.
13, Chairman. The Chairman of the Council's job is to safeguard the Constitution of this Council. A key part of the Constitution, and I touched on it earlier, is the vital scrutiny of the executive of this Council by all those who don't serve in it, the Cabinet. This is a vital and healthy part of the democratic process, particularly for those of us in opposition. Therefore, will the Chairman agree to reinstate Councillor questions items towards the start of the agenda as being opposed to left at the end? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I will reply to that. On the 7th of May, I wrote to all councillors to explain that I had decided on a trial basis to move the item councillor questions to the end of the council agenda. Questions from councillors tend to be a lengthy item, as you've noticed tonight, and I have changed the order of our agenda to see how this works with the flow of the meeting. As part of the trial, I remain happy to receive any feedback from members. I will trial this arrangement once more at our meeting on the 23rd of October and then make a decision. The right of councillors to submit formal questions in advance and to receive replies in public has not changed. There has been no change to the ability of our scrutiny committees to hold the executive to account. Nor has there been any change to the ability of individual councillors to require items to be added to scrutiny agendas. All that has happened is that on a trial basis, I have moved where questions appear on our agenda at full council meetings. The end of questions from councillors. Item 12, there are no urgent items. Item 13, no exempt business. And thank you all for coming and staying here on this very hot evening. Go and get some fresh air now. A good journey home. Thank you.